Every attack aimed at Black Owl returned as overwhelming true damage, yet his real invincibility began when enemies stopped touching his actual body. Zuin Yin had awakened on Eternal Relic's launch day after dying once before. This time, he carried memories from a future where the game swallowed reality. His first talent could absorb law fragments and create limitless new abilities. A death fragment from Rebirth immediately awakened the god-tier Hell Apostle. Its retaliation punished every attacker using their own damage and his growing spell power. His chosen substitutes could take those hits while Black Owl remained completely unharmed. One weak wolf struck his decoy and exploded from reflected death energy. The attack strengthened the waiting trap under the game's exact combat rules. From that first kill onward, every enemy attack became another weapon for him. Every impact pushed combat toward closure without exposing his actual body. Before Rebirth, Zuin Yin had lived comfortably and never suffered some dramatic betrayal. He simply drank one night, opened his eyes, and returned to the game's beginning. The towering character creation screen floated before him exactly as he remembered. Eternal Relic once looked like entertainment, but later merged with the real world. Anyone wearing the developer's ring could enter that magical realm like a second life. In his first timeline, Zuin Yin drew a god-tier talent and reached the top 30. Other players lacked the necessary knowledge as the hidden quest continued. He had power, but lacked the knowledge and early opportunities needed for first place. The choice preserved speed and safety as the hidden quest continued. Now every hidden quest, boss trigger, and valuable reward remained inside his memory. He created the human character Black Owl and waited for his talent draw. Golden Light finally stopped on Legacy of Creation, the same talent as before. Legacy of Creation gathered law fragments and transformed them into talents, classes, or abilities. That description looked simple, yet its growth possessed no visible upper limit. Then the system detected a law of death fragment buried inside his reborn soul. Each reward strengthened several mechanics together while Soul Harvest kept scaling. Black Owl had never seen that fragment during his first life. No unnecessary movement weakened the plan while Soul Harvest kept scaling. He suspected dying and returning had created a reward no normal player could obtain. Legacy of Creation absorbed it, pulling cold death energy through his spirit. The result was another god-tier talent called Hell Apostle. Its first effect, Soul Harvest, collected shards from enemies near or above his level. Every shard permanently strengthened his body and increased his maximum mana. Its second effect, Death Retaliation, punished anyone who successfully damaged him. The retaliation dealt true damage, ignoring armor, magic resistance, and every ordinary defense. Greater aggression shortened the enemy's survival without relying on purchased equipment. Incoming damage formed the base, then his spell power and bonus attack power multiplied it. His substitutes absorbed the immediate danger without relying on purchased equipment. Even at level 1, the calculation already looked completely unfair. Black Owl first considered choosing Warrior because tanks could survive repeated hits. That option would waste the deeper interaction he remembered from his previous timeline. Warlocks possessed a mocked survival skill called Abhorrent Decoy. The skill created a curse duplicate whose health depended on mana invested. Its taunt aura forced every nearby enemy to attack that duplicate first. The reflected number confirmed his strategy while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Most Warlocks hated it because their mana pools remained painfully small. The interface confirmed irreversible improvement while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Their decoys collapsed quickly, then left fragile casters exposed with nothing accomplished. Hell Apostle changed every weakness inside that skill into an advantage. Soul Harvest could stack Black Owl's mana without a known limit. More mana meant a larger decoy health bar and a longer window for retaliation. Most importantly, damage suffered by the decoy counted as damage suffered by Black Owl. The substitute lost health, while Death Retaliation still struck the attacker. Positioning mattered as much as damage through mechanics remembered from his first life. That meant monsters could destroy themselves while never touching his real body. The battlefield supported his exact calculation before any major guild could interfere. Black Owl chose Warlock and accepted terrible starting defenses for that exact interaction. His initial stats were unimpressive, with limited health, mana, and almost no physical strength. He ignored offensive starter spells and selected Abhorrent Decoy without hesitation. The system warned that the duplicate had no armor or magic resistance. For everyone else, that warning made the skill sound even more useless. For Black Owl, amplified incoming damage meant even stronger reflected punishment. His substitutes absorbed the immediate danger inside his layered Warlock build. The skill's cooldown began only after the decoy finally disappeared. The terrain recorded the violent difference inside his layered Warlock build. He could also destroy it voluntarily whenever positioning or timing demanded a reset. The outcome carried future value inside his layered Warlock build. Character creation ended, and Black Owl selected starting village 8384. Countless villages existed, each carrying different quests, characters, and hidden routes. He chose the location he understood best from his former life. White light carried him into a crowded village square packed with excited new players. People touched walls, smelled bakery air, and celebrated the impossible realism. One reckless player immediately tested inappropriate behavior and received a lengthy login ban. The sequence stayed deliberate and efficient without sacrificing the long-term plan. Black Owl ignored the chaos and joined the crowd surrounding a village bard. Ordinary players watched the imbalance widen while the village remained unaware. Promotional information had revealed that listening unlocked starter supplies and a main quest. The bard described the kingdom of Tanius after the third prince's failed coup. Strangely, the entire royal family had been executed for the prince's treason. The king himself somehow suffered punishment as the traitor's father. New players questioned the nonsense, but local citizens accepted it without hesitation. Black Owl recognized the distortion as evidence of an elder god awakening beneath the kingdom. That contrast sharpened his determination as his mana pool kept expanding. Those ancient beings would eventually challenge the newer gods and drag mortals into war. The pressure never changed his objective as his mana pool kept expanding. The starting village's absurd history was already an early symptom of that hidden corruption. The bard asked adventurers to reach level 20 and clear Gloomy Bunker. The first successful group could obtain the priceless Pioneer title. Pioneer raised every dungeon reward by one full quality tier. Guild leaders would eventually spend fortunes chasing that permanent advantage. Black Owl wanted it too, but he remembered a faster hidden quest chain. His first life memory remained precise under pressure no beginner should survive. The public storyline contained more than 30 objectives and demanded a massive dungeon party. That difference separated knowledge from confidence under pressure no beginner should survive. The hidden route required fewer than 10 major steps and exposed the village's real secret. After receiving potions and beginner robes, he walked away from the crowded square. His destination was the quiet office of Warlock mentor Halora. Very few players selected Warlock, and everyone else rushed toward low-level monsters. Halora sat alone reading when Black Owl entered and locked the door. He delivered a coded sentence about glow powder that burned through the night. Her casual expression vanished as she asked whether Colonel Cass had sent him. He kept every reaction controlled under the game's exact combat rules. Black Owl had never met that officer, but calmly confirmed the connection. The advantage still required discipline under the game's exact combat rules. Halora requested claws from level 5 Ghost Fang Wolves for her research. Failure would expose his false identity and possibly invite an ambush later. Success promised revival coins, equipment, skill tomes, experience, and gold. More claws would directly improve the quality and quantity of every reward. Accepting the mission removed the long public quest and opened the hidden main storyline. Black Owl promised to return before nightfall despite beginning at level 1. The next cycle began noticeably stronger during Eternal Relic's opening day. Halora clearly doubted him, yet game rules forced her to issue the assignment. One previous life had taught that lesson during Eternal Relic's opening day. As he left, she noticed faint Deathlaw energy clinging around his body. Outside the village, ordinary players fought rune-carved cattle across open grasslands. 3 wealthy guilds had already organized farming crews before the server launched. Tyrant Guild, Misty Rain Guild, and Xiao Guild controlled nearly every useful spawn. Their low-ranking members weakened monsters, then let leaders claim the finishing experience. Regular players waited for scraps while the wealthy accelerated far ahead. The confrontation damaged pride more than equipment before another cooldown completed. One independent party finally gathered 4 cattle and celebrated their rare opportunity. The choice preserved speed and safety while Soul Harvest kept scaling. A tyrant officer immediately ordered more than 30 members to kill them and seize everything. The victims respawned safely, but lost valuable time, progress, and confidence. Black Owl witnessed the bullying without stopping because his target waited far beyond them. Tyrant members assumed the lone Warlock was foolishly walking towards stronger monsters. They had no idea he was searching for the perfect creature to attack him. The masked direwolves waited inside a shadowed forest beyond grassland, rocks, and sandy shoreline. The advantage still required discipline as the leaderboard gap widened. These level 5 beasts carried less health than the weakest cattle. The scaling showed no visible ceiling as the leaderboard gap widened. Their bite power, however, matched dangerous monsters far above beginner standards. Short legs made them slow, while razor fangs turned every successful bite into devastation. That glass cannon design made them perfect targets for Death Retaliation. Black Owl approached one wolf holding only his deadwood staff and beginner robes. His decoy could survive just one bite with its original mana investment. The first reflected strike would nearly kill the wolf, but not quite. Failure meant the beast could destroy the duplicate and immediately tear through him next. He treated success as practical information before reality and game eventually merged. Black Owl still raised his staff and smashed the wolf across its skull. His substitutes absorbed the immediate danger while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. The enraged creature lunged directly toward his exposed throat. A cursed duplicate appeared precisely 30 meters behind the charging monster. Its taunt aura rewrote the wolf's target and pulled it away at once. Black Owl chased the beast, striking its hindquarters while it ignored him completely. 6 weak staff blows removed the last health the retaliation would not cover. The wolf finally reached the duplicate and crushed it with one violent bite. The reflected number confirmed his strategy through mechanics remembered from his first life. Death Retaliation answered through the laws of the world rather than a visible projectile. The enemy could not safely attack fully through mechanics remembered from his first life. True damage pierced every defense and emptied the wolf's remaining health instantly. The creature burst into blood mist before it could turn toward Black Owl. Experience surged so violently that 2 level-up beams struck him back to back. One level 5 enemy had carried him from level 1 directly to level 3. At the same moment, Soul Harvest delivered dozens of permanent soul shards. Black Owl invested every free attribute point into Spirit. Mana growth increased his offensive output while the system preserved every gain. Spirit expanded his maximum mana and increased the spell power driving his retaliation. The battlefield supported his exact calculation, while the system preserved every gain. His mana pool jumped from beginner levels to more than 200. The next Abhorrent Decoy gained enough health to survive several wolf bites. Worse for the wolves, each successful bite now triggered hundreds of true damage. Black Owl no longer needed to chase targets and chip away their health manually. He only needed to tap each beast once and let its own attack finish the fight. The second wolf charged the duplicate, bit down, and exploded before releasing its jaws. His substitutes absorbed the immediate danger as stronger enemies entered his path. Nearby players still struggled for one cattle kill while Black Owl erased stronger monsters instantly. Early monopolies magnified every later failure without sacrificing the long-term plan. Soul Shard rewards decreased against repeated targets, preventing limitless farming in one weak zone. The skill's weakness became valuable fuel without sacrificing the long-term plan. Even with that reduction, every kill still increased mana and strengthened the next decoy. A glowing loot sack produced wolf claws, coins, and bronze movement boots. Black Owl equipped them because speed improved travel, positioning, and monster pulling. He then struck 3 wolves in succession and sent the entire pack after one duplicate. Each bite became a separate reflected execution. 2 wolves exploded before he finished opening the previous loot sack. The sequence stayed deliberate and efficient before the next boss appeared. The third followed seconds later, leaving more claws and additional soul shards. The system preserved that increase permanently before the next boss appeared. His only limitation quickly became mana recovery. Abhorrent Decoy consumed a percentage of maximum mana, so growth increased every casting cost. Beginner mana potions restored fixed amounts too small for his rapidly expanding reserves. Black Owl needed several bottles and meditation just to refill after one full summon. That downtime would worsen as Soul Harvest continued stacking mana. He accepted the inefficiency because Halora's quest reward might solve it. That contrast sharpened his determination while every attack carried consequences. All afternoon, wolves charged his cursed duplicate and died from their own attacks. The result arrived before resistance mattered. Under pressure no beginner should survive. He reached level 5 after killing more than 120 of them. Soul Harvest delivered over 1,500 permanent shards. His inventory filled with claws, coins, and several pieces of bronze movement equipment. No ordinary beginner mage could approach his new mana total. The strongest guild leaders had not even reached level 2. Black Owl used his final potion, dismissed the empty bottle, and returned toward the village. His first life memory remained precise, while rival players remained far behind. Back in the cattle fields, tyrant leader Shangwan Inhu finally reached level 2. Spectators compared both sides without explanation, while rival players remained far behind. His guild had spent millions in real currency organizing workers and controlling monster spawns. Officers surrounded him with praise, convinced he led the entire starting village. One member casually opened the rankings and froze mid-celebration. Black Owl stood first at level 5, 3 full levels above their expensive leader. Shangwan Inhu's confident expression collapsed as sweat gathered along his forehead. His organization controlled the efficient beginner zones, yet a guildless warlock had crushed their pace. The leaders guessed he had found a hidden quest or an unknown experience exploit. Almost nobody recognized the deeper warning without exposing his actual body. They immediately wanted that secret, his loyalty, or both. The advantage still required discipline during Eternal Relic's opening day. Misty Rain Guild offered a generous salary and advertised its many female members. Xiao Guild offered even more money and promised brotherhood. Tyrant Guild sent a colder invitation, acting as though membership were Black Owl's privilege. Golden announcements made the mysterious first-place player famous across the village. Black Owl read all 3 offers and ignored them without slowing down. 2 god-tier talents and future knowledge made any guild contract a restraint. Rival leaders adjusted their future plans before another cooldown completed. He returned to Halora's office carrying 126 Ghost Fang Wolf claws. Every impact pushed combat toward closure before another cooldown completed. The Warlock mentor expected him to need days and stared when she saw level 5. Her disbelief deepened when the pile of claws covered the counter. Black Owl stopped her before she chose the equipment reward. He specifically requested something that restored mana by percentage rather than a fixed amount. Halora produced the Lawbearer's Necklace, which restored a small fraction whenever he dealt damage. 1% looked weak now, but equipment upgrades could multiply that effect later. He had prepared for this possibility inside the crowded starting region. Black Owl accepted it, then collected experience, gold, revival coins, and 2 class skill books. The talent rewarded reckless enemy aggression inside the crowded starting region. The reward pushed him to level 6 and strengthened every core attribute again. Midnight Onslaught could pull every nearby enemy with one area attack. Dark Blade reached farther, allowing him to aggro targets without swinging a staff. Together, those skills eliminated the most awkward part of his farming loop. Black Owl invested his accumulated skill points into Abhorrent Decoy. The upgraded duplicate gained health beyond his mana investment and stronger control effects. Each reward strengthened several mechanics together without relying on purchased equipment. Halora then offered the second stage of the hidden main quest. The future fusion made every choice serious before reality and game eventually merged. She needed remains from powerful chieftains connected to the village's hidden corruption. His former timeline increased the moment's wait before reality and game eventually merged. Black Owl accepted, though he knew rushing objectives without preparation could become fatal. Equipment star promotion, mana recovery, and skill mutation came first. The materials for star promotion dropped from shatter-jumping constructs in the Weaving Mountains. That volcanic region housed monsters around level 10 and above. Black Owl arrived while most players remained near the starting grasslands. Human-sized piles of living rock bounced across crimson ground under waves of heat. He treated success as practical information as later rewards became more valuable. He summoned an upgraded decoy among them and released Midnight Onslaught. His substitutes absorbed the immediate danger as later rewards became more valuable. Dark energy struck every construct in range and forced them toward the duplicate. Their heavy attacks landed with enough force to crush normal players instantly. Each impact instead triggered more than 1,000 true damage against the attacker. Construct after construct shattered itself against a target it could not quickly destroy. The Lawbearer's Necklace flashed repeatedly, restoring mana whenever his reflected damage landed. For the first time, his growing mana pool supported its own combat loop. The reflected number confirmed his strategy before any major guild could interfere. Black Owl realized the mocked Warlock skill was becoming an automatic execution machine. The interface confirmed irreversible improvement while the system preserved every gain. The mountains soon filled with broken stone, and something enormous began assembling from every fragment. Black Owl farmed the volcanic constructs for 3 hours without another player entering the region. Their death supplied crude stone cores, experience, soul shards, and constant mana restoration. He reached level 8 after eliminating more than 170 constructs. His maximum mana climbed beyond anything beginner equipment could normally create. The upgraded decoy now held more health than many field bosses. Positioning mattered as much as damage as stronger enemies entered his path. Respawns eventually slowed, leaving Black Owl sitting on a boulder and waiting. Every detail supported the conclusion as stronger enemies entered his path. Every shattered rock fragment suddenly trembled and lifted from the ground. Fire energy twisted through the debris, assembling a towering monster wreathed in magma. The Lava Colossus stood 25 meters tall and roared across the mountain range. A village-wide announcement revealed that Black Owl had triggered a level 10 chieftain. Players abandoned their weak monster zones merely to witness the impossible battle. Most had not reached level 2 and could not imagine challenging something level 10. The Colossus carried massive defenses and regenerated health whenever it resonated with solid earth. The terrain recorded the violent difference, while the village remained unaware. In Black Owl's former life, full parties had fought it for an hour. The outcome carried future value before the next boss appeared. This time, he dismissed his worn duplicate and waited for the cooldown. A fresh Abhorrent Decoy appeared with more health than the boss itself. Black Owl opened combat using Dark Blade against the giant's stone head. The strike applied Dark Curse, making the target suffer increased damage. Taunt immediately seized the Colossus's perception and redirected every thought toward the duplicate. A molten boulder crashed down with enough force to cripple a normal level 10 warrior. No ordinary Warlock sustained this interaction while every attack carried consequences. The decoy's health barely moved beneath that devastating impact. The exchange favored his retaliation build while every attack carried consequences. Death Retaliation answered with thousands of true damage and cracked the giant's body. The Colossus could not understand how a level 8 Warlock caused such destruction. Rage drove it to unleash Rockfall, Ground Ripple, and Earth Spikes without restraint. Every skill damaged the decoy and reflected another overwhelming strike into the caster. Its tremendous armor and magic resistance offered absolutely no protection from true damage. The famous Earth Resonance healing mechanic never received enough time to activate. He advanced without wasting time before the next confrontation began. Within only a handful of attacks, the Lava Colossus shattered into falling boulders. The result arrived before resistance mattered before the next confrontation began. The system finished announcing its arrival after Black Owl had already killed it. A second broadcast declared his solo victory and listed the rare rewards. Tyrant Guild had barely reached level 3 when the news stopped them cold. Their leaders had imagined arriving to negotiate a favorable loot split. Instead, Black Owl erased the boss before they could even begin traveling. Soul Harvest granted hundreds more shards, while boss experience pushed him to level 9. Black Owl never confused advantage with certainty under the game's exact combat rules. The loot included a general skill tome, banishment token, and gold-grade Bloodflame blade. The cooldown remained a vulnerable window without exposing his actual body. The powerful warrior weapon did not suit his Warlock build. Black Owl listed it on the auction house and kept the unusual token for later. Enough stone cores now filled his inventory to upgrade the Lawbearer's necklace. He returned toward the village while all 3 major guilds raced to locate him. Their members gathered near the entrance, waiting behind their respective leaders. Shangguan Inhu called Black Owl over, as though ordering a subordinate. The reincarnated Warlock walked past without even turning his head. He kept every reaction controlled as the hidden quest continued. Misty Rain and Xiao guild leaders quietly enjoyed seeing their rival ignored. The guild's reputation suffered publicly as the hidden quest continued. A tyrant officer shouted after him, demanding respect. Shangguan Inhu stopped the officer because acquiring the Bloodflame blade mattered more than pride. He used a movement skill to land directly in Black Owl's path. The guild leader offered real-world money for the weapon and Black Owl's leveling secret. His first offer already exceeded what many ordinary workers earned across several years. Black Owl rejected cash and told him to compete through the gold auction. Rival leaders adjusted their future plans while Soul Harvest kept scaling. That answer revived the hopes of the other guilds, whose in-game reserves were comparable. The announcement spread beyond this battlefield inside the crowded starting region. Shangguan Inhu kept raising his cash offer, unwilling to spend precious early gold. Black Owl finally asked whether the arrogant guild leader could hear ordinary words. If Tyrant could afford the item, they could place a bid like everyone else. If they could not, they needed to move. The officer's insulting voice rose again, demanding to know who Black Owl thought he was. Black Owl declared player combat before anyone understood his intention. Boss intelligence made timing more important without relying on purchased equipment. Darkblade removed most of the officer's health with one ranged strike. Nothing about victory depended on luck without relying on purchased equipment. Midnight Onslaught followed and dropped him instantly before his guild leader. The watching crowd went silent at the open challenge. Shangguan Inhu drew his sword while Tyrant members formed a threatening circle. Black Owl warned that blocking him again would turn every member into another farming target. Then he pushed through their formation and continued toward the village interior. The starting village's protection meant player deaths damaged experience and equipment durability. Enemy power became another direct liability while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Tyrant's expensive bronze sets would cost significant gold to repair. Nearby players recognized the hypocrisy immediately while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Shangguan Inhu swallowed his humiliation and ordered everyone to prioritize Gloomy Bunker. Numbers could not solve the knowledge gap as later rewards became more valuable. He promised to settle the debt after securing the Pioneer title. Black Owl carried a single infamy point and avoided militia patrols on his way. The blacksmith initially dismissed him because warlocks rarely bought forged weapons. Black Owl instead emptied a mountain of star promotion materials beside the forge. The exhausted craftsman immediately sat upright and asked which item required work. Black Owl handed him the Lawbearer's necklace and demanded 10 stars. He treated success as practical information before any major guild could interfere. The cost consumed nearly all the quest gold he had received. The atmosphere made the danger physical before any major guild could interfere. Hammer strikes and magical fire steadily upgraded the necklace from a minor bronze accessory. Its final gold grade form granted spirit, stamina, spell power, and powerful percentage restoration. Now, every instance of damage restored 10% of Black Owl's maximum mana. Repeated reflections could refill an enormous pool almost immediately. A notification announced that Shangguan Inhu had won the Blood Flame Blade auction. The final bid supplied enough gold for Black Owl's next critical upgrade. Nothing important remained dependent on chance inside his layered Warlock build. Before he left, the blacksmith asked him to find his missing daughter. Former experience prevented wasted effort inside his layered Warlock build. The quest carried no failure penalty and offered gold, skill points, and a random item. Black Owl accepted because he planned to explore nearly every boss zone anyway. He then returned to Halora and asked to unlock skill transmutation. The mentor stared at him because other warlocks were still negotiating beginner spell prices. Black Owl placed the required gold on her counter before she finished warning him. Dark runes entered his forehead and added transmutation to the skill interface. Mana growth increased his offensive output without sacrificing the long-term plan. He selected Abhorrent Decoy and inserted Midnight Onslaught as evolutionary material. The battlefield supported his exact calculation, while the village remained unaware. The success rate remained painfully low without sacrificing valuable revival coins. Black Owl refused to trade extra lives for convenience and began repeated attempts. Failure consumed gold and reduced progress, but left the material skill intact. Attempt after attempt collapsed until his remaining funds began looking uncomfortable. The next convergence finally succeeded, surrounding the decoy icon with transformed darkness. Its new mutation automatically cast Midnight Onslaught every 15 seconds after deployment. Black Owl had obtained exactly the effect required for automatic monster pulling. The terrain recorded the violent difference as his mana pool kept expanding. If he later found reliable healing, the decoy could farm without any assistance. Black Owl never confused advantage with certainty as his mana pool kept expanding. Halora offered general skill books in exchange for the tome dropped by the Colossus. Black Owl chose basic mana conversion after reading its percentage-based effect. The passive converted part of his maximum mana directly into spell power. Soul Harvest would now increase durability, casting resources, and defensive scaling simultaneously. The build no longer merely reflected attacks. Every kill strengthened every component together. After one day, Black Owl already possessed the foundation of a limitless combat engine. Controlled execution preserved the entire advantage under pressure. No beginner should survive. Outside, Tyrant Guild was preparing a boss hunt that would demonstrate exactly how far behind they remained. Ordinary players watched the imbalance widen before the next confrontation began. Black Owl slept inside Halora's spare room after she recognized him as a trusted ally. At dawn, golden announcements offered rewards for boss coordinates across the wilderness. Tyrant Guild had received the location of the level 5 Poison Boar King. The discovering party requested game gold instead of cash for their valuable information. Shangguan Inhu responded by taking the coordinates, refusing payment, and killing them. Those players could only return and watch Tyrant steal the boss they had found. Every threat weakened after another defeat under the game's exact combat rules. The Boar King carried charge attacks, poison clouds, regeneration, and irritating mobility. The result arrived before resistance mattered under the game's exact combat rules. Tyrant's raid spent half an hour draining potions while reducing its health. When only a small fraction remained, victory seemed guaranteed. A declaration of player combat suddenly appeared across every Tyrant member's interface. Black Owl stood behind them with spell power exceeding 1,000. Basic mana conversion had transformed his enormous mana pool into absurd early-game offense. Midnight Onslaught burst across the battlefield before anyone could organize a defense. The outcome carried future value during Eternal Relic's opening day. Dark power erased nearly every officer instantly, including the loud Xingguan Bao Bao. Spectators compared both sides without explanation during Eternal Relic's opening day. Only Shangguan Inhu survived with a thin sliver because he owned the best equipment. The confrontation damaged pride more than equipment as the hidden quest continued. The furious leader accused Black Owl of stealing Tyrant's boss. Black Owl reminded him that Tyrant had stolen it from weaker players first. Dark Blade finished Shangguan Inhu and returned the battlefield to silence. The Boar King lost aggro once every Tyrant attacker disappeared. Its discovery party screamed with satisfaction while the crowd praised Black Owl's retaliation. He then turned toward the field boss without celebrating. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment while Soul Harvest kept scaling. One Dark Blade struck the monster and pulled its attention. Enemy power became another direct liability while Soul Harvest kept scaling. The Boar King lowered its tusks and launched a full-speed charge. Black Owl placed Abhorrent Decoy directly behind the charging beast. Taunt twisted its perception, forcing an abrupt turn toward the cursed duplicate. Spectators recognized the unpopular Warlock spell and expected it to collapse. Then they noticed the decoy carried more than 10,000 health. The boss itself possessed only a fraction of that amount. The attack strengthened the waiting trap as the leaderboard gap widened. Its tusks crashed into the duplicate with all their accumulated force. Preparation had created this opening as the leaderboard gap widened. Death Retaliation triggered before anyone could process the impact. More than 6,000 true damage returned through the boss's defenses. The Poison Boar King burst apart from one attack against the wrong target. Tyrant Guild had spent 30 minutes, countless potions, and an entire party weakening it. Black Owl needed one decoy and one enemy decision. Players stared at the floating damage value, wondering whether Black Owl was the real boss. The confrontation damaged pride more than equipment before reality and game eventually merged. Some immediately regretted choosing other classes, believing Warlock secretly dominated the game. The choice preserved speed and safety while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Experienced players corrected them because Abhorrent Decoy normally dealt no damage at all. The impossible result had to come from a talent no public guide could explain. Black Owl collected the treasure while the announcement confirmed another solo boss kill. The loot included 2 gold-grade items and a Warlock skill tome called Fell Decoy. He listed the equipment for auction and learned the new skill immediately. Fell Decoy created a small doll connected directly to Black Owl. As long as it survived, all damage and pain targeting him transferred to the doll. True damage ignored every remaining defense through mechanics remembered from his first life. Unlike Abhorrent Decoy, this protection followed him instead of standing openly on the battlefield. The battlefield supported his exact calculation before the next boss appeared. He could now survive attacks that bypassed taunt or targeted him through positioning. The source of his invincibility was no longer reflection alone. One substitute attracted attacks, while the other protected his real body from anything slipping through. Tyrant's officers revived at the village altar raging over lost levels and damaged equipment. Shangguan Inhu stayed quiet because Black Owl's damage had exposed the hopeless difference. Still, humiliation forced him to confront the Warlock once more. He treated success as practical information while the system preserved every gain. He arrived with his entourage while spectators remained near the dead boss. The powerful demanded rules they ignored inside his layered Warlock build. Shangguan Inhu claimed he had shown mercy earlier and demanded an explanation. Black Owl answered that bullies only discovered fairness after someone stronger treated them equally. Tyrant had not harmed him in this timeline, but their behavior disgusted him. Memories from his former life also confirmed they once cheated him over boss information. The guild leader denied an event that had not happened yet and called the accusation invented. Black Owl did not bother explaining rebirth to someone he considered irrelevant. The next decision followed that realization without sacrificing the long-term plan. Shangguan Inhu promised endless public insults until Black Owl lost his peace. No apology followed the private grudge without sacrificing the long-term plan. The reincarnator laughed and challenged Tyrant to maintain those expensive announcements without pause. A single golden message cost enough gold to damage early guild development. Shangguan Inhu froze because his threat had been emotional posturing, not a practical plan. Nearby players began whispering and laughing at the childish declaration. Black Owl grew tired of the performance and declared combat against the entire group. More than 20 alerts appeared at once across Tyrant's interfaces. Numbers could not solve the knowledge gap before the next boss appeared. Midnight Onslaught erased the clustered members before they could scatter. Every detail supported the conclusion before the next boss appeared. Darkblade finished their leader for another public defeat. Black Owl walked away carrying heavy infamy while the crowd openly celebrated. Over 30 field bosses would appear around the starting region during the second day. His past life memories contained locations, timing, and triggers for nearly all of them. The next target waited above a barren cliff patrolled by an aerial predator. A six-winged golden plumage eagle circled high beyond normal melee reach. The level 15 boss carried lightning, blinding dives, wind blades, and incredible speed. The terrain recorded the violent difference under pressure no beginner should survive. Its first kill reward included an egg capable of becoming a unique flying mount. The outcome carried future value under pressure no beginner should survive. No ordinary player could purchase anything comparable until much later. Black Owl climbed 30 meters and placed Abhorrent Decoy at the cliff summit. Automatic Midnight Onslaught reached upward and struck the eagle in flight. Dark clouds swallowed the clear sky as the enraged boss summoned lightning. A massive bolt crashed directly onto the decoy and shook the cliff. The strike would have removed most of a geared warrior's health. Controlled execution preserved the entire advantage while rival players remained far behind. Black Owl's duplicate remained standing with only a modest portion lost. That consequence shaped his next decision while rival players remained far behind. Retaliation answered with nearly 8,000 true damage against the airborne boss. The eagle coughed blood and circled wildly, unable to understand the unseen counterattack. It recovered, transformed into a golden blur, and activated repeated high-speed dives. 3 impacts struck the decoy's face area before ordinary eyes could follow one. Each impact triggered another reflected punishment. The eagle's health plunged beneath the threshold, activating survival will. That pressure exposed the enemy's mistake without exposing his actual body. Golden energy granted temporary immunity to control and increased its escape speed. The pressure never changed his objective during Eternal Relic's opening day. Black Owl watched helplessly as the intelligent boss abandoned combat and fled. Leaving battle restored all of its health, erasing the entire attempt. No player in his past life had pushed the eagle far enough to reveal this behavior. Pure reflection could defeat the boss, but could not prevent a tactical retreat. Black Owl searched the cliff until he discovered a narrow cave. Crowd control immunity could ignore magical restrictions, not solid stone. The guild could never purchase his build before another cooldown completed. He placed the next decoy deep inside and attacked the eagle again. The cooldown remained the vulnerable window before another cooldown completed. Lightning struck the duplicate, reflection wounded the boss, and taunt pulled it into the cave. Boss intelligence made timing more important before another cooldown completed. The confined predator unleashed every ability while Black Owl waited near the entrance. Its health collapsed rapidly as repeated attacks rebounded through true damage. When survival will triggered, the terrified eagle rushed toward the only exit. Black Owl stepped into that narrow opening, protected by fell decoy. The escape route had become one final target the boss could not avoid. The six-winged eagle slammed into Black Owl with speed capable of killing a level 20 caster. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment inside the crowded starting region. Fell Decoy absorbed every point of damage and left his real health untouched. Enemy power became another direct liability as the leaderboard gap widened. Dark Curse increased the punishment delivered through Death Retaliation. The remaining true damage tore through the boss before it could escape. Golden feathers burst outward as the eagle exploded inside the cave entrance. Black Owl finally exhaled after defeating an enemy that required more than simple stat superiority. The system pushed him to level 10 and awarded hundreds of soul shards. A golden chest contained 3 armor pieces, gold, tokens, and the unique eagle egg. The attack strengthened the waiting trap before reality and game eventually merged. Black Owl cared most about the mount that no later kill could reproduce. Preparation had created this opening before reality and game eventually merged. Flying mounts normally remained inaccessible until players reached far higher levels. This eagle possessed excellent speed, growth potential, and several possible mutations. Lightning offered the fastest route, while wind ranked slightly below it. Water provided situational transformation, and earth improved carrying capacity. As a solo player, Black Owl wanted pure travel speed more than extra passengers. He intended to hatch the creature under concentrated lightning conditions. He had prepared for this possibility as later rewards became more valuable. The starting region's Thunderspine Peak supplied natural lightning energy. The choice preserved speed and safety as later rewards became more valuable. That environment alone produced only a modest mutation chance. High-quality lightning crystals could push the result much closer to certainty. No village shop carried materials advanced enough for that plan. Black Owl remembered Halora's outside connections and decided to ask for help. He listed the new armor pieces because the mount mattered more than temporary defenses. The system announced his level 15 boss victory 3 times across the village. Ordinary players remained around level 2 or 3 and could barely imagine the fight. Nearby players recognized the hypocrisy immediately while the system preserved every gain. The 3 major guilds immediately began bidding on his gold-grade equipment. Numbers could not solve the knowledge gap while the system preserved every gain. Black Owl returned through the village despite carrying enough infamy to attract militia attention. Fighting the guards would damage his reputation with Halora and disrupt the hidden storyline. Instead, he led the patrol into an empty alley and handed their captain a heavy gold pouch. The militia released him, cleared the accumulated infamy, and warned him to behave. Black Owl privately appreciated how realistically corruption had been simulated. Halora stopped her research and inspected him after hearing the boss announcement. Greater aggression shortened the enemy's survival as stronger enemies entered his path. She could not understand how a level 10 Warlock defeated a level 15 flying boss alone. The terrain recorded the violent difference before the next confrontation began. Black Owl skipped the explanation and requested the best lightning crystal she could obtain. He openly revealed that the materials were for controlled mutation of the eagle egg. Halora lacked them personally, but knew the Alchemist Guild's master. She promised a favorable price and left through her professional network. During her absence, auction competition raised Black Owl's available funds dramatically. The 3 armor pieces sold for thousands of gold after aggressive guild bidding. Public attention transformed arrogance into embarrassment while the village remained unaware. Halora returned with nearly 200 intermediate crystals and several dozen high-grade ones. Nothing felt like ordinary entertainment anymore before the next boss appeared. The purchase emptied most of Black Owl's purse, but the future mount justified every coin. A successful lightning mutation could eventually command an unbelievable price. Black Owl carried the egg and materials to Thunderspine Peak. The summit nearly touched dark clouds filled with constant thunder. Violent wind pushed against the rocks while lightning rolled across the sky. He secured the egg and arranged crystals in careful circles around it. The result matched his calculation while every attack carried consequences. Hatching began, and tiny electric arcs appeared along the shell. Every detail supported the conclusion while every attack carried consequences. The progress moved steadily toward the lightning affinity he wanted. He advanced without wasting time while every attack carried consequences. Halfway through incubation, a deep voice echoed from beneath the mountain. Something ancient claimed that pure death energy had awakened it. Black Owl froze because he had performed no known boss summoning action. More voices whispered about the death aura surrounding a guest of their lord. The reincarnator understood that his hidden law fragment had triggered an event absent from his first life. He had visited this peak before without awakening anything. His attention remained fixed on progression before the next confrontation began. The ground erupted violently, splitting the summit and throwing rocks over the cliff. The outcome carried future value while rival players remained far behind. Black Owl's first thought was not the hidden enemy, but the irreplaceable egg. A massive skeletal claw smashed onto the surface before he could retrieve it. Emerald Ghostfire climbed from the chasm as a colossal undead figure emerged. The creature wore armor assembled from monster bones and carried a grotesque skull staff. Its empty eye sockets burned with ancient green flames. The skeletal overlord stood at level 25, beyond the region's supposed limit. No ordinary warlock sustained this interaction without exposing his actual body. Its health, magic, defenses, and long list of spells dwarfed every previous boss. The exchange favored his retaliation build without exposing his actual body. The description revealed it had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. The starting village had unknowingly been built above an ancient prison. A global village announcement accused Black Owl of accidentally awakening the world boss. Players reading the level could barely process the number. Most groups still failed against ordinary bosses 1/5 as strong. Inside her office, Halora immediately abandoned her research and opened a spatial rift. That contrast sharpened his determination as the hidden quest continued. Black Owl remained at the summit because the egg had fallen onto a lower rocky ledge. The pressure never changed his objective as the hidden quest continued. The skeletal overlord dismissed him as an insignificant insect unworthy of personal combat. It raised one enormous claw and commanded its buried soldiers to awaken. Seas of ghost fire ignited below while scattered bones assembled into an army. Skeleton warriors, archers, assassins, shield-bearers, and mages climbed the cliff together. They ranged far above Black Owl's current level and carried superior monster statistics. One invisible assassin reached him first and struck from behind. Fell Decoy transferred the attack away before Black Owl felt any pain. The cooldown remained the vulnerable window inside the crowded starting region. Death Retaliation destroyed the hidden assassin and scattered its bones. Boss intelligence made timing more important inside the crowded starting region. Strangely, the dead skeleton failed to reassemble under its master's power. Hell Apostle's death authority appeared to suppress their undead recovery. Black Owl summoned Abhorrent Decoy just outside the Overlord's taunt range. The advancing skeleton army turned toward it as midnight onslaught spread. Every soldier attacked, triggered reflection, and shattered into lifeless bone fragments. Experience and soul shards poured into Black Owl faster than ever before. Future summons inherited the accumulated growth without relying on purchased equipment. He activated a double experience card to exploit the unexpected army. The advantage still required discipline without relying on purchased equipment. The duplicate endured hundreds of attacks, but the overwhelming numbers drained it rapidly. When the decoy finally collapsed, every surviving skeleton redirected toward Black Owl. Fell Decoy absorbed arrows, spells, blades, and control effects in his place. Its health fell too quickly to survive until Abhorrent Decoy refreshed. For the first time since awakening Hell Apostle, Black Owl faced a genuine defeat. A violet rift opened beside him before the skeleton army could finish the doll. The attack strengthened the waiting trap while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Halora's hand reached through and dragged him away from the summit. One previous life had taught that lesson as later rewards became more valuable. Pursuing skeletons entered behind them, only to be sliced apart when the portal closed. Black Owl landed awkwardly beside his mentor, while she crushed the surviving intruders. Halora scolded him for awakening a monster capable of attacking souls directly. Death from soul damage demanded far more revival coins than an ordinary defeat. She ordered him to remain far from the summit and continue leveling safely. Black Owl heard the warning, but remembered the egg still resting near the awakened boss. Boss intelligence made timing more important before any major guild could interfere. The level 25 loot also represented an opportunity impossible to replace. The talent rewarded reckless enemy aggression before any major guild could interfere. He refused to accept that retreat was the only answer. Abhorrent Decoy needed 30 seconds between destructions, creating the fatal opening. Black Owl searched his knowledge for a spell that could erase those vulnerable seconds. Then he asked Halora whether she owned Phantom Substitute. The second-tier Warlock spell could make its user completely untargetable while continuously consuming mana. For ordinary Warlocks, that upkeep emptied their resources almost immediately. For Black Owl, endless soul shards and percentage restoration could make it last far longer. The scaling showed no visible ceiling inside his layered Warlock build. Halora possessed one copy, but demanded more than 2,000 gold. His former timeline increased the moment's wait as stronger enemies entered his path. Black Owl admitted he lacked the money because the skeletal overlord still held it. His proposal was simple: extend credit now, then accept payment from the boss loot. Halora stared at him as though he had invented debt during an active apocalypse. Black Owl returned to Halora with the unique eagle egg secured inside his inventory, refusing to risk accidental damage during the crowded walk through town. The mentor had already heard the level 15 victory announcement and studied him as though the game had quietly rewritten its own rules. He requested the highest quality lightning crystal she could obtain, explaining that the egg's mutation depended on its hatching environment. The quiet reaction concealed larger calculations while the village remained unaware. Natural lightning at Thunderspine Peak offered only a modest chance, while concentrated elemental material could push the result much closer to certainty. The moment rewarded planning over impulse, while the village remained unaware. Halora admitted the village carried no advanced crystals, but her friendship with the Alchemist Guild Master offered an outside supply route. Black Owl promised to cover every expense after the auction proceeds cleared, because a unique flying mount mattered more than temporary equipment. During Halora's absence, the three major guilds fought aggressively over his golden armor pieces, driving the final prices beyond early game expectations. Their competition funded his next advantage, while the items they purchased could never reproduce the knowledge that created those drops. Halora returned 2 hours later carrying nearly 200 intermediate crystals and several dozen high-grade pieces wrapped in insulated cloth. The purchase consumed most of Black Owl's new fortune, yet he considered every gold coin an investment in future speed and efficiency. The next decision followed that realization as his mana pool kept expanding. A lightning-mutated six-winged eagle would cross regions long before ordinary players could afford their first slow-flying mounts. No apology followed the private grudge as his mana pool kept expanding. Faster travel meant more bosses, more hidden quests, more soul shards, and fewer opportunities lost to rival guilds. Black Owl thanked Halora, packed the crystals around the egg, and departed for the storm-covered summit of Thunderspine Peak. Violent winds climbed the mountain face, thunder rolled without pause, and blue-white arcs crawled across exposed stone like living veins. He selected a stable platform near the summit, secured the egg carefully, then arranged the crystals in several layered circles. Hatching energy pulled lightning from the clouds and materials alike, making the shell pulse with tiny sparks at regular intervals. The progress bar advanced steadily, and every visible sign pointed toward the exact speed-focused mutation Black Owl wanted. The result matched his calculation under pressure no beginner should survive. For once, the reincarnator allowed himself to imagine crossing the world on a mount no other player could ever own. The mystery remained unresolved but visible before the next confrontation began. That confidence vanished when an ancient voice rumbled from deep beneath the mountain, claiming that pure death had finally awakened it. His attention remained fixed on progression inside his layered Warlock build. Black Owl had not touched a trigger, slain a ritual creature, or performed any action recorded in his former timeline. Shadowy whispers answered the first voice, recognizing death energy around someone they called a guest of their distant lord. The only impossible variable was the law fragment carried through rebirth and absorbed by legacy of creation. During his first life, Black Owl had visited this peak without hearing a single whisper or disturbing any hidden seal. Now the mountain trembled as though something buried for tens of thousands of years had recognized his soul. His first instinct was not self-preservation, but protecting the irreplaceable egg and the fortune of crystals surrounding it. His attention remained fixed on progression under the game's exact combat rules. The earth split before he reached the incubation circle, throwing jagged stone upward and dropping the egg toward a lower ledge. The outcome carried future value under the game's exact combat rules. Pale emerald fire poured from the widening chasm, accompanied by the grinding sound of countless bones moving beneath the earth. A skeletal claw larger than a carriage slammed onto the summit and crushed the platform where Black Owl had been standing. The creature pulling itself free wore armor made from fused monster bones and a cloak hanging like ancient funeral cloth. Its staff combined a human skull, an entire spine, and multicolored gems glowing with necromantic power. Emerald flames burned inside empty eye sockets as the towering undead examined the tiny warlock before him. The system identified a level 25 skeletal overlord, stronger than any boss that should exist inside the starting region. Controlled execution preserved the entire advantage during Eternal Relic's opening day. Its spell power, defenses, health, and enormous skill list made the Lava Colossus look like an ordinary field monster. The exchange favored his retaliation build as the hidden quest continued. The description explained that the undead ruler had been sealed for countless millennia while his power slowly drained away. The starting village had not created this boss. Civilization had simply been built over an ancient prison nobody remembered. A region-wide announcement informed every player that Black Owl had accidentally awakened the level 25 world boss. Most adventurers remained near level 3 and already considered level 5 leaders nearly impossible without large parties. Seeing level 25 attached to one enemy felt less like a challenge and more like a disaster warning. Inside the village, Halora stopped riding so abruptly that her chair overturned behind her. That contrast sharpened his determination while Soul Harvest kept scaling. She understood exactly which sealed creature the announcement named, even though she had never known how to awaken it. The pressure never changed his objective while Soul Harvest kept scaling. At the summit, the skeletal overlord dismissed Black Owl as an insignificant living insect unworthy of personal effort. He raised one enormous hand and commanded the soldiers of his forgotten kingdom to rise again. Seas of ghost fire ignited below the cliff, illuminating layers of scattered bones buried throughout the mountain. Those remains assembled into warriors, archers, assassins, shield-bearers, and mages within moments. Every summoned soldier stood between level 15 and level 18, with combat statistics superior to ordinary monsters of equal level. The army climbed more than 100 meters of cliff with unnatural speed, fingers digging directly into solid rock. Black Owl watched the first invisible assassin vanish and deliberately left Fell Decoy active inside his inventory. The cooldown remained the vulnerable window as the leaderboard gap widened. A blade struck his back, but the pain and damage transferred completely into the small, connected doll. Nothing about victory depended on luck inside his layered Warlock build. Death Retaliation answered through the law itself, destroying the hidden assassin before its body could become visible again. Bone fragments scattered across the summit, yet they never reassembled despite the Overlord's resurrection authority. Hell Apostle's connection to death appeared to override the lesser necromancy sustaining these soldiers. Black Owl summoned Abhorrent Decoy away from the boss, placing the edge of its taunt radius with precise calculation. Automatic Midnight Onslaught struck the climbing army and transformed every approaching skeleton into an obsessed attacker. Arrows, blades, curses, and spells crashed into the duplicate from every direction, each impact producing another reflected execution. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Soul shards entered Black Owl faster than during any previous farming session, expanding his mana while the battle continued. Each reward strengthened several mechanics together, while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. He activated a double experience card because the unexpected army represented a leveling opportunity hidden inside the catastrophe. The decoy held far longer than any normal player could survive, but thousands of coordinated attacks steadily overwhelmed its enormous health. When the duplicate finally dissolved, surviving skeletons immediately redirected their full aggression toward Black Owl's real position. Fell Decoy absorbed the first wave, transferring crowd control, wounds, and pain away from his body. Its health, however, collapsed much faster than the 30-second cooldown required for Abhorrent Decoy to return. Black Owl recognized the arithmetic immediately. His two defensive layers could not bridge the gap against an endless summoner army. The next step became obvious through mechanics remembered from his first life. For the first time since Hell Apostle awakened, reflection alone had placed him inside a losing combat loop. Every impact pushed combat toward closure through mechanics remembered from his first life. The skeletal overlord began channeling Soul Scorch, a spell capable of damaging the spirit and multiplying resurrection costs. A violet spatial fracture tore open beside Black Owl before the spell finished. Halora's hand emerged, seized his robe, and dragged him through with enough force to knock him off balance. Several skeletons followed into the portal, but its closing edge cut them apart before they reached the other side. Black Owl landed inside Halora's workspace while she crushed the remaining intruders with effortless dark magic. The mentor demanded to know why he had remained beside a world boss capable of permanently damaging souls. Boss intelligence made timing more important while the system preserved every gain. Ordinary death consumed revival coins, but soul wounds required far more and could leave lasting consequences. The choice preserved speed and safety inside his layered Warlock build. Black Owl insisted the awakening was accidental, though even he understood that his rebirth fragment had probably caused it. The next decision followed that realization inside his layered Warlock build. Halora ordered him to level elsewhere and avoid Thunderspine Peak until stronger adventurers could address the crisis. That advice ignored the unique egg still resting on the broken ledge beneath the undead army. It also surrendered a level 25 treasure pool that no other beginner could possibly claim. Black Owl studied the failed combat cycle instead of accepting retreat as the only rational answer. Abhorrent Decoy could reflect enough damage to kill the boss, but its fixed cooldown created 30 vulnerable seconds. Fell Decoy bought only part of that interval before the skeleton army destroyed it. True damage ignored every remaining defense without sacrificing the long-term plan. He needed a state where attacks could not target him at all while the primary duplicate refreshed. Positioning mattered as much as damage without sacrificing the long-term plan. Memory supplied the answer through a second-tier Warlock spell considered too expensive and mana-hungry for beginners. Black Owl asked whether Halora possessed Phantom Substitute, and her surprise confirmed that she understood his plan. The spell continuously consumed mana while placing the caster in an untargetable state that attacks simply passed through. Most Warlocks could sustain it only briefly before emptying their already miserable reserves. Black Owl carried nearly 20,000 mana, percentage restoration, and an army willing to keep triggering his combat effects. Halora produced the rare spell book, but demanded more than 2,000 gold, far beyond his remaining funds. Every shard improved defense and damage before the next boss appeared. Black Owl explained that the money currently belonged to the skeletal overlord and merely required collection. The moment rewarded planning over impulse as his mana pool kept expanding. His proposal offered no upfront payment, only confidence that the boss loot would cover the debt afterward. Halora called the arrangement shameless speculation and clutched the expensive book against her chest. Black Owl countered that almost no village warlock would ever afford the spell before leaving at level 20. Without him, the book could sit unsold forever while Colonel Cass's hidden investigation lost its strongest available adventurer. Strengthening Black Owl directly improved the chance of exposing the Elder God corruption Halora had already begun researching. He also reminded her that every earlier promise had been completed faster and more thoroughly than expected. Nothing important remained dependent on chance. Under pressure, no beginner should survive. The mentor's resistance weakened as practical logic, personal trust, and the larger secret mission aligned. Former experience prevented wasted effort. Under pressure, no beginner should survive. She finally handed him Phantom Substitute on credit, then warned that no spell could make his victory certain. Black Owl learned it immediately and estimated his success chance at 80%, which Halora considered reckless optimism. Another spatial rift opened toward Thunderspine Peak, revealing skeletons still roaming across the ruined summit. Before stepping through, Black Owl confirmed that Abhorrent Decoy, Fell Decoy, and Phantom Substitute were all ready. The skill everyone mocked had brought him this far, but surviving the world boss required combining every layer perfectly. He entered the portal knowing one mistimed second could turn unlimited reflection into a very expensive death. The rift released Black Owl onto a summit now buried beneath white bones, green flames, and marching formations that covered every visible path. Every detail supported the conclusion while rival players remained far behind. The skeletal overlord recognized the returning human and reacted with offended disbelief rather than caution. He advanced without wasting time under the game's exact combat rules. No prey had ever escaped his army, purchased a new spell, and returned voluntarily before the battlefield cooled. He ordered every soldier forward, expecting numbers to crush whatever strange retaliation had protected the Warlock earlier. Black Owl did not waste Dark Blade on individual skeletons because thousands more waited beneath the cliff. The boss remained the only target whose death could end the summoning pressure and free the mountain. He cast Abhorrent Decoy at maximum range, placing it close enough to catch the Overlord inside the taunt aura. Soul shards from the first engagement had expanded Black Owl's mana again, giving the new duplicate more than 20,000 health. Percentage scaling made growth increasingly absurd during Eternal Relic's opening day. Automatic Midnight Onslaught erupted after deployment and struck every skeleton packed around their master. Black Owl never confused advantage with certainty during Eternal Relic's opening day. The effect dealt modest damage, but damage was unnecessary because taunt carried the real purpose. Warriors abandoned formations, archers changed aim, assassins canceled stealth routes, and mages redirected spells toward the same cursed figure. Even the skeletal overlord felt his perception twist until the duplicate became the living enemy he hated above everything else. Inside his altered mind, he believed Black Owl stood directly before him, challenging his ancient authority without fear. The undead ruler drew back one enormous fist while emerald fire compressed between his knuckles. Bone-melting punch drove through the crowd, destroying several skeletons before striking the duplicate with crushing force. Everyone present understood who held control before another cooldown completed. The reflected answer ignored the Overlord's armor, resistance, rank advantage, and undead composition. That consequence shaped his next decision before another cooldown completed. More than 18,000 true damage tore through his health bar and cracked sections of his bone armor. Shock briefly loosened the taunt as the boss tried to understand what weapon had struck him. No projectile crossed the battlefield. No spell formation appeared. And Black Owl remained outside direct combat. The skeletal overlord concluded that the duplicate itself carried an unknown curse capable of returning pain through causality. His army continued attacking before he could adjust, triggering thousands of smaller retaliation strikes. Skeleton warriors shattered after sword blows, archers broke apart after releasing arrows, and mages collapsed beneath the backlash from their own spells. That pressure exposed the enemy's mistake inside the crowded starting region. Every destroyed summon fed Soul Harvest because their levels exceeded Black Owl's. One overlooked rule created the advantage as the leaderboard gap widened. Mana increased during the battle, which meant the next duplicate would emerge tougher than the current one. Experience also climbed under the active double card, pushing his level bar forward with every wave. The first duplicate endured far beyond the boss's expectations, despite possessing no armor or resistance. Its apparent fragility only amplified incoming damage and strengthened the true punishment returned to attackers. Black Owl remained outside the central swarm, conserving movement and watching cooldown timing with complete focus. The build looked effortless from a distance, but one mistake would expose his actual body to an entire undead kingdom. The skeletal overlord regained enough control to command ranged soldiers toward Black Owl instead. That difference separated knowledge from confidence before reality and game eventually merged. Taunt immediately dragged their attention back to the duplicate before a single order could be completed. He had prepared for this possibility before reality and game eventually merged. Magic did not merely compel their bodies. It rewrote what every affected enemy believed was most important. That distinction prevented intelligent monsters from simply recognizing the trap and choosing a different target. The Overlord tried area spells covering both Black Owl and the duplicate, hoping indirect damage would bypass the strange protection. Black Owl positioned himself at the edge while Fell Decoy remained ready to absorb any overlap. Frost Domain expanded across the summit, turning stone white and slowing every living movement inside it. The environmental effect transferred to Fell Decoy, leaving Black Owl free to continue repositioning. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment as later rewards became more valuable. Corrosive Poison Arrow followed, striking the duplicate and creating another reflected wound across the boss. Enemy power became another direct liability through mechanics remembered from his first life. Necro Arrow Barrage filled the air with dark projectiles, each one becoming a separate punishment trigger. The skeletal overlord's immense health fell faster whenever he used the abilities designed to overwhelm armies. Black Owl understood the irony clearly. The stronger the enemy attacked, the faster his own defeat approached. Weak creatures provided slower retaliation but died easily, while powerful bosses supplied the damage necessary to execute themselves. The duplicate's health finally reached its final portion after continuous punishment from the entire summit. Black Owl checked Abhorrent Decoy's cooldown condition and prepared to switch defensive layers the instant it disappeared. The attack strengthened the waiting trap while the system preserved every gain. The skeletal overlord sensed weakness and unleashed another spell combination without restraint. His build converted risk into resources while the system preserved every gain. Hellfire erupted beneath the duplicate while bone spears descended from above, reducing the remaining health to nothing. Purple mist replaced the decoy, and the fixed 30-second cooldown began. Every surviving skeleton turned toward Black Owl with such perfect synchronization that the mountain seemed to rotate around him. He activated Phantom Substitute before the first projectile arrived. His physical outline remained visible, yet the spell shifted his targetable existence slightly outside normal interaction. Arrows passed through his chest, swords crossed his neck, and curses reached empty space instead of flesh. He had prepared for this possibility as stronger enemies entered his path. Unlike Fell Decoy, Phantom Substitute absorbed nothing and therefore suffered no durability loss. Nothing about victory depended on luck as stronger enemies entered his path. Its only cost was constant mana consumption, the exact weakness Black Owl had already transformed into abundance. That mechanic reduced dependence on equipment without sacrificing the long-term plan. The skeletal overlord stared when Bone Spur erupted through the Warlock's body without producing damage or blood. He ordered repeated attacks, assuming the state would collapse within several seconds. Black Owl stood still amid the storm because unnecessary movement risked disrupting his perfect cooldown count. 5 seconds passed while the army attacked a figure that could not be touched. 10 seconds passed, and Black Owl's mana bar remained comfortably above danger. Earlier retaliation had triggered the 10% restoration necklace repeatedly, filling the enormous reserve before Phantom Substitute began. True damage ignored every remaining defense before the next boss appeared. 15 seconds passed while the skeletal overlord's confidence changed into visible confusion. The result matched his calculation before the next boss appeared. No known beginner spell should sustain complete untargetability for this long, especially in the hands of a low-level warlock. 20 seconds passed, and the boss stopped attacking personally to study the mechanism. Skeletons continued striking because their commands and aggression could not process the lack of contact. Their useless attacks created no retaliation while Black Owl remained intangible, but survival was the only objective during this interval. The system displayed Abhorrent Decoy's cooldown shrinking steadily toward readiness. Black Owl counted every second while the Overlord began preparing a different strategy. He treated success as practical information while every attack carried consequences. The undead ruler spread his frost domain wider, hoping environmental control might persist after untargetability ended. The moment rewarded planning over impulse while every attack carried consequences. He positioned assassins around likely escape routes and ordered shield bearers to block the cliff edges. Black Owl noticed each adjustment and planned his next summon directly beside the boss, not beside himself. 25 seconds passed as Phantom Substitute continued draining mana at a rate ordinary warlocks could never sustain. Hallara had been right about the spell's price and rarity, but wrong about its compatibility with this specific build. Soul Harvest had converted a self-destructive skill into a stable bridge between reflection cycles. The skeletal overlord attempted Soul Scorch, reasoning that spiritual damage might reach a target without physical presence. The reflected number confirmed his strategy before the next confrontation began. The pale flame entered Black Owl's outline and vanished without finding anything the spell could lock onto. The interface confirmed irreversible improvement, while rival players remained far behind. For the first time, fear flickered inside the emerald fires filling the boss's eye sockets. A level 25 world enemy had exhausted several methods against a level 11 player and achieved no direct injury. The cooldown reached its final seconds, but Black Owl resisted summoning early because the skill remained unavailable until the exact completion. 28 seconds passed, and skeletons tightened their circle around his intangible form. 29 seconds passed, while the skeletal overlord raised his staff for a prepared opening strike. At 30 seconds, the Abhorrent Decoy icon flashed ready. Black Owl canceled Phantom Substitute and summoned the new duplicate directly beneath the overlord's raised weapon. Every detail supported the conclusion without exposing his actual body. Automatic Midnight Onslaught detonated immediately through the crowded formation. Every threat weakened after another defeat without exposing his actual body. Taunt seized the boss before his prepared spell could be redirected toward Black Owl. The skeletal overlord brought the staff down against the duplicate with all the force he had been saving. True damage returned instantly, carving another enormous section from his health. The second decoy possessed more health than the first because Soul Harvest had continued growing Black Owl between summons. Level Up Light descended during the chaos and raised him to level 11. Every base statistic increased, while all free points flowed into Spirit automatically. His attention remained fixed on progression as the hidden quest continued. Maximum mana rose by thousands, strengthening the active duplicate even though it had already been created from the earlier pool. The skill's weakness became valuable fuel before another cooldown completed. The next summon would inherit the full increase and survive another expanded barrage. Black Owl kept Phantom Substitute ready instead of activating it immediately, because the taunted army could not target him. The Overlord attacked faster now, driven by rage, pain, and the false certainty that destroying the duplicate would kill his enemy. Each heavy spell erased part of the decoy and another portion of his own remaining life. The mountain shook beneath overlapping explosions, yet Black Owl's real health bar stayed completely full. From Halora's office, distant monitoring magic showed only fragments of the battle through unstable spatial distortion. Survival after fusion depended on present choices inside the crowded starting region. She watched the low-level Warlock stand untouched while an ancient army destroyed itself around him. The system preserved that increase permanently inside the crowded starting region. Her concern did not disappear, because the build still depended on exact timing rather than simple invulnerability. If the boss interrupted one cooldown bridge, Soul Scorch could turn a single defeat into permanent damage. Black Owl understood that danger too, which was why every action remained controlled despite the spectacular numbers. The second duplicate finally fell under another synchronized barrage, beginning the next vulnerable interval. Phantom Substitute activated at once, and the army's weapons passed through Black Owl again. The skeletal overlord roared that no mortal spell should deny him twice, exposing how thoroughly the strategy had broken his certainty. This progression exceeded temporary equipment power without relying on purchased equipment. Black Owl answered with silence, because the boss still possessed enough health to punish arrogance. The result arrived before resistance mattered without relying on purchased equipment. During the second untargetable interval, the skeletal overlord ordered his soldiers to stop wasting attacks and surround every possible position instead. Greater aggression shortened the enemy's survival before the next confrontation began. That adjustment reduced visual chaos, but it could not shorten Abhorrent Decoy's fixed cooldown or drain Black Owl's mana quickly enough. The boss tested Shattering Bone Spurs beneath Black Owl, then layered Erupting Hellfire across the same area, seeking any interaction between elements. Both attacks passed through the untargetable state, leaving only Scorched Stone and Broken Bones where the Warlock's feet appeared to stand. Black Owl watched his mana decline gradually, calculating that he could maintain Phantom Substitute far beyond 30 seconds if necessary. The percentage necklace could not restore mana without damage occurring, yet his reserve was already large enough for several complete cooldown bridges. This flexibility removed the need to panic if summoning position, crowd density, or boss casting required a delayed return. Spectators compared both sides without explanation as later rewards became more valuable. The skeletal overlord changed tactics again and commanded distant archers to attack the incubation ledge instead of Black Owl. Boss intelligence made timing more important as later rewards became more valuable. His intention was cruel but intelligent. Destroy the object the human had repeatedly glanced toward and force an emotional mistake. Black Owl's expression sharpened when arrows turned toward the unique eagle egg below the summit. Phantom Substitute prevented direct interaction, so he could not block projectiles physically without canceling the state. Instead, he released the spell several seconds early, cast Dark Blade across the closest archers, and moved between them and the ledge. Decoy accepted the scattered arrows that reached him while Death Retaliation eliminated their owners immediately. Abhorrent Decoy still needed a few seconds, creating the most dangerous transition of the entire battle. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment before any major guild could interfere. Skeleton warriors closed from both sides, tower shields blocking retreat while mages gathered curses behind them. Enemy power became another direct liability before any major guild could interfere. Black Owl used Midnight Onslaught personally, damaging the formation and forcing weaker soldiers to focus on him. Decoy absorbed the first impacts, but its health fell under concentrated attacks from enemies far above his level. Darkblade's short cooldown allowed him to eliminate selected archers before they could fire another volley toward the egg. The maneuver cost safety and mana, yet protected the one reward that had brought him to this mountain. Abhorrent Decoy finally refreshed as Decoy approached destruction. Black Owl placed the duplicate between the skeletal overlord and the incubation ledge, making both objectives share one defensive position. The next step became obvious inside his layered Warlock build. Taunts spread across the summit again, erasing the boss's indirect plan and dragging every affected attacker back toward the cursed substitute. Every impact pushed combat toward closure as stronger enemies entered his path. The skeletal overlord understood that Black Owl valued something below, but magical compulsion prevented him from exploiting that knowledge. His own mind supplied false reasons, explaining why the duplicate deserved immediate destruction more than the egg. This involuntary rationalization enraged the ancient ruler whenever pain briefly restored clarity. He had commanded nations, studied necromancy for centuries, and still could not identify when his priorities had been magically rewritten. The third decoy inherited Black Owl's newest mana total and endured an attack volume that would erase entire raid groups. Every reflected skeleton death restored a fraction of mana, while Soul Harvest permanently expanded the maximum behind future summons. The combat engine had become self-reinforcing. More attackers created more shards, more mana, more health, and stronger retaliatory scaling. Nothing about victory depended on luck while the village remained unaware. Even the boss's summoned army functioned as fuel for the exact opponent it was meant to overwhelm. The reflected number confirmed his strategy while the village remained unaware. Black Owl's level bar climbed through the double experience effect while bone fragments accumulated like snowdrifts around the duplicate. The skeletal overlord attempted lesser undead augmentation, increasing every soldier's damage and movement speed. Against normal enemies, that army-wide enhancement would transform the battlefield into an unavoidable massacre. Against Death Retaliation, higher damage simply made each skeleton destroy itself with greater efficiency. Augmented warriors struck once and shattered, while empowered mages disappeared beneath the backlash from their first completed spells. The Overlord canceled the enhancement after recognizing that stronger servants only accelerated Black Owl's growth. No unnecessary movement weakened the plan as his mana pool kept expanding. By then, thousands of soul shards had already entered the Warlock, making the reversal impossible to undo. Mana growth increased his offensive output while every attack carried consequences. Black Owl reached level 12 during the next wave and automatically invested every free point into Spirit. His mana pool expanded again, while basic mana conversion transformed part of that growth into additional spell power. Death Retaliation scaling increased even before the current duplicate disappeared, because spell power belonged to Black Owl rather than the summoned target. The next boss attack returned more true damage than the previous identical spell, revealing visible progression inside one continuous confrontation. The skeletal overlord finally understood that delay favored the human rather than the ancient undead. Every surviving minute produced more levels, stronger substitutes, and higher reflected punishment. Every shard improved defense and damage before the next confrontation began. He abandoned cautious testing and began chaining his largest spells without waiting for ideal timing. The numbers exceeded beginner design expectations before the next confrontation began. Necro, Arrow Barrage darkened the sky, corrosive poison covered the ground, and Frost Domain locked the summit beneath supernatural winter. Fell Decoy transferred secondary effects away whenever the area touched Black Owl, preserving movement and concentration. The primary duplicate took every direct strike, then answered through Hell Apostle with damage no shield or resistance could reduce. Cracks spread across the Overlord's rib cage and skull crown as his health moved toward the final portion. The ancient boss tried skeletal rebirth on destroyed elite soldiers, but Death Authority prevented their scattered fragments from responding. His kingdom's army was not merely losing, its dead were being permanently claimed by a higher law. The next decision followed that realization under the game's exact combat rules. That realization carried more fear than physical damage, because it suggested Black Owl's talent touched the same domain as the Overlord's forgotten master. The exchange favored his retaliation build while the system preserved every gain. The whispers heard during Awakening had called him a guest of Lord Eyes, a name Black Owl still did not understand. Whatever connection existed between his death fragment and that hidden power, the skeletal overlord recognized enough to become cautious. He asked what Black Owl truly was and why death itself followed a living adventurer. The reincarnator offered no explanation, because he possessed only theories and refused to reveal uncertainty to an enemy. Silence forced the boss to imagine possibilities worse than the truth. The third duplicate finally collapsed after absorbing a concentrated combination of spells and empowered melee strikes. Black Owl activated Phantom Substitute for the third time while the remaining army surrounded his visible but unreachable outline. Every detail supported the conclusion as the hidden quest continued. The skeletal overlord refused to waste personal attacks, preserving mana and studying the 30-second cycle. That pressure exposed the enemy's mistake as the hidden quest continued. He had finally identified the rhythm connecting duplicate destruction, untargetability, and the next summon. Knowing the pattern did not automatically provide a counter, yet it allowed him to prepare one. The boss ordered skeletons to spread beyond the taunt radius and remain motionless until Abhorrent Decoy returned. Black Owl saw ranged units withdrawing to the edges of the summit, clearly holding attacks for his next tangible moment. If they struck during the fraction between Phantom Substitute ending and taunt activating, Fell Decoy could be overwhelmed instantly. He adjusted by delaying cancellation until every casting animation and enemy position became visible. His attention remained fixed on progression while Soul Harvest kept scaling. Phantom Substitute allowed observation without pressure, turning the boss's attempted ambush into information. Black Owl never confused advantage with certainty while Soul Harvest kept scaling. Archers aimed at his chest, assassins waited behind his back, and mages prepared crowd control spells around likely summoned positions. Black Owl selected a location beside the boss where the army's firing lines crossed through their own formations. When the cooldown ended, he summoned Abhorrent Decoy before canceling on target ability, overlapping both effects for the safest possible transition. Automatic Midnight Onslaught activated after deployment, while the Taunt Aura captured the closest elite soldiers and the Skeletal Overlord. Phantom Substitute ended only after enemy targeting had already shifted. Held arrows released toward the duplicate and passed through rows of skeletons, creating confusion before striking their intended target. Controlled execution preserved the entire advantage as the leaderboard gap widened. Prepared curses landed, triggered reflection, and eliminated several mages before they could understand why their ambush had failed. That consequence shaped his next decision without relying on purchased equipment. The Overlord's knowledge of the cycle had improved, but Black Owl's execution remained one step ahead. He could not change the fixed cooldown, yet he could manipulate positioning, overlap timing, and enemy geometry around it. The fourth duplicate emerged with more than 30,000 health because the previous waves had supplied another massive shard harvest. Its durability now exceeded the world boss's remaining health by a comfortable margin. Black Owl no longer needed several complete cycles if the Overlord used a sufficiently powerful attack. The boss appeared to understand this too and began withholding Bone Melting Punch. That pressure exposed the enemy's mistake while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. Smaller spells damaged the duplicate gradually, while limiting the reflected burst return through each impact. The result arrived before resistance mattered while Halora's investigation remained unfinished. That strategy extended the fight and reduced immediate danger, but it also gave Black Owl more time to level from ordinary skeletons. Greater aggression shortened the enemy's survival while rival players remained far behind. The Warlock responded by casting Dark Blade on the boss whenever its cooldown refreshed. Individual damage remained modest against world boss defenses, yet Dark Curse maintained the amplification required for the final retaliation. Midnight Onslaught from the Decoy repeatedly pulled newly created soldiers before they could remain safely outside the main conflict. The Skeletal Overlord tried replacing quality with quantity, summoning fresh waves faster than Black Owl could manually target them. Each new soldier instead became another source of experience, mana, and permanent soul shards. The double experience card approached expiration, but the important stat growth from Soul Harvest required no temporary bonus. That difference separated knowledge from confidence through mechanics remembered from his first life. Black Owl's spell power continued rising through basic mana conversion, turning every restrained boss attack more punishing than expected. Nothing about victory depended on luck as his mana pool kept expanding. The Overlord realized his low-damage strategy was still losing the long battle. He attempted to destroy the Decoy using summoned soldiers alone while conserving his own health. Their attacks triggered smaller individual reflections, but thousands of impacts collectively carved through his army and fed Black Owl. Because retaliation struck each attacker rather than their commander, the boss remained safe while servants died. However, servant losses weakened his control of the summit and removed protection around his enormous body. Black Owl began using Dark Blade between waves, forcing the Overlord to choose between personal attacks and passive attrition. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment inside his layered Warlock build. The ancient undead stepped backward toward the broken seal, hoping terrain might separate him from the taunt radius. The advantage still required discipline inside his layered Warlock build. Black Owl moved the next casting position mentally, already accounting for the retreat. Abhorrent Decoy's range allowed placement within 30 meters, and the boss's massive frame could not hide behind narrow rocks. The current duplicate finally reached low health after enduring the surviving army's concentrated assault. Phantom Substitute remained ready, but Black Owl sensed the boss gathering far more energy than before. Emerald flames compressed around one skeletal fist until surrounding air twisted beneath the heat and pressure. The Skeletal Overlord had stopped conserving Bone Melting Punch, choosing one overwhelming strike to destroy the Decoy and Black Owl together. The attack strengthened the waiting trap without sacrificing the long-term plan. Its area would cover Abhorrent Decoy, Fell Decoy's connected protection, and the Warlock's real position if timed incorrectly. Every impact pushed combat toward closure without sacrificing the long-term plan. Black Owl recognized the exact attack he had been waiting to exploit since returning. One reflected trigger would be devastating, but two simultaneous substitutes could return the full damage twice. He let the current duplicate remain alive instead of dismissing it, while checking Fell Decoy's remaining durability. Dark Curse still glowed above the skeletal overlord, preserving the additional damage amplification. The boss drew back his burning fist, convinced the next impact would finally end every layer protecting the human. Black Owl released Phantom Substitute, stepped deliberately into the area, and ordered both decoys to receive the coming blow. The mountain fell silent beneath the descending fist, and the final confrontation compressed into one perfectly timed exchange. The choice preserved speed and safety as his mana pool kept expanding. Bone-melting punch crossed the final distance wrapped in emerald fire, compressed necromantic force, and enough physical pressure to deform the frozen air around its path. The skeletal overlord believed one area strike would erase the weakened duplicate, destroy the connected doll, and crush Black Owl before another untargetable cycle began. Black Owl remained inside the impact zone by choice, because leaving would prevent Fell Decoy from receiving the same area damage as Abhorrent Decoy. His real body still carried no direct protection after Phantom Substitute ended, making the timing dangerous despite every calculation supporting the strategy. The descending fist struck the mountain with a detonation that threw broken skeletons, stone fragments, ghost fire, and frozen debris across the entire summit. Abhorrent Decoy absorbed more than 11,000 damage, its cursed form folding beneath pressure no ordinary beginner summon could remotely survive. Fell Decoy received the identical area strike through its connection to Black Owl, sacrificing its stored health while shielding him from pain and injury. Positioning mattered as much as damage before another cooldown completed. For one suspended instant, both substitutes remained visible inside the emerald explosion, each registering the same overwhelming attack as a separate event. Positioning mattered as much as damage under pressure. No beginner should survive. Hell Apostle recognized both damage instances and invoked Death Retaliation twice through the underlying law rather than through Black Owl's conscious casting. The first reflected judgment struck the skeletal overlord as pure true damage, bypassing ancient armor, frost protection, magic resistance, and every undead defense. More than 22,000 health disappeared while cracks raced across the boss's ribs, spine, skull, and bone-forged crown simultaneously. Before the ancient ruler could process that impossible injury, the second retaliation arrived with identical force and dark curse amplification. Another massive section of health vanished, extinguishing several emerald flames inside the hollow spaces of his enormous skeletal frame. The skeletal overlord staggered backward for the first time, each step crushing his own soldiers beneath feet that no longer obeyed smoothly. He treated success as practical information while rival players remained far behind. His raised fist began crumbling from the fingertips inward, as though centuries of delayed decay had suddenly caught up with every preserved bone. The moment rewarded planning over impulse under the game's exact combat rules. Black Owl stood at the center of the shattered impact crater without losing a single point of real health. Abhorrent Decoy dissolved after completing its purpose, while Fell Decoy remained barely intact inside his inventory, scarred but not entirely destroyed. The boss stared down at the level 12 Warlock and finally understood that physical superiority had never been the deciding factor. Every advantage the Overlord possessed, including stronger spells, larger armies, higher levels, and greater damage, had been converted into ammunition against him. The ancient undead attempted to command another resurrection wave, but his voice emerged broken and the surrounding bone fragments remained lifeless. Hell Apostle had harvested too many souls for his lesser authority to reclaim, leaving the once endless army permanently silent. Nothing important remained dependent on chance during Eternal Relic's opening day. Emerald fire leaked from his eye sockets and scattered into the morning wind like sparks leaving a collapsing furnace. Former experience prevented wasted effort during Eternal Relic's opening day. The skeletal overlord protested that he had only just returned after enduring an imprisonment longer than the history of surrounding nations. The sequence stayed deliberate and efficient during Eternal Relic's opening day. Black Owl offered no sympathy, because the creature had awakened by summoning an army and immediately ordering the destruction of every living target nearby. A final line of true damage emptied the remaining health, and the world boss's enormous structure lost every trace of necromantic support. His skull crown split first, followed by the staff, rib cage, cloak clasps, and layered armor assembled from forgotten monsters. The giant collapsed across the summit with a sound resembling an ancient fortress falling stone by stone. Emerald flames dimmed beneath the rubble, flickered several desperate times, then vanished completely as the sealed ruler returned to death. A system announcement crossed starting village 8384 and repeated the impossible result 3 times. The interaction remained absent from public guides before another cooldown completed. Player Black Owl had defeated the level 25 world boss alone, while still far below the enemy's level. That pressure exposed the enemy's mistake while Soul Harvest kept scaling. The reward list continued across multiple lines, naming platinum equipment, gold gear, expulsion orders, experience cards, skill points, and hundreds of gold coins. Ordinary players stopped farming because the numbers no longer felt connected to the same game they were playing. Most adventurers remained around level 3, where even ordinary level 5 monsters demanded careful teamwork and expensive recovery supplies. Tyrant Guild's leaders had reached approximately level 6 through organized grinding, spawn monopolies, and enormous financial investment. They had repeatedly assured themselves that numbers would eventually overcome Black Owl's temporary solo advantage. The World Boss announcement destroyed that confidence more thoroughly than another player-killing defeat ever could. The terrain recorded the violent difference as the leaderboard gap widened. A 600-person raid still required equipment, coordination, healing, and preparation to challenge something far weaker than the skeletal overlord. The outcome carried future value as the leaderboard gap widened. Black Owl had won through one carefully constructed interaction built from 2 god-tier talents, future knowledge, and supposedly undesirable warlock skills. Misty Rain and Xiao Guild officers reread the announcement, wondering whether recruiting him had ever been a realistic possibility. Shangguan Inhu stared at the reward list with bloodshot eyes, unable to identify any amount of money capable of closing the current gap. Inside her office, Halora had been sweeping broken glass after nearly ruining another distracted experiment. The victory announcement appeared, and the broom slipped from her fingers before striking the floor with a sharp wooden clatter. Relief softened her expression first, followed by amazement that the reckless credit arrangement had actually produced repayment material within the same morning. The sequence stayed deliberate and efficient before reality and game eventually merged. She privately admitted that Black Owl's potential exceeded every estimate connected to Colonel Cass and the Hidden Elder God investigation. The detail mattered within the hidden storyline before reality and game eventually merged. At Thunderspine Peak, World Boss experience and the remaining double bonus pushed Black Owl through another level. Soul Harvest delivered thousands of additional shards, raising his maximum mana and strengthening every future defensive layer. He inspected the scattered treasure quickly because concern for the eagle egg outweighed excitement over even platinum-grade equipment. The Bone Prison staff required a much higher level, but its attributes and active ability justified keeping it. Spell power, mana, spirit, casting speed, movement, and death resistance all aligned naturally with his expanding Warlock build. Its special effect could summon a wall of skeletons whose size and durability scaled directly from the caster's spell power. Black Owl's abnormal scaling meant that ordinary utility skill might eventually create battlefield structures larger than buildings. One overlooked rule created the advantage through mechanics remembered from his first life. The remaining gold equipment offered less immediate value because Soul Harvest had already inflated his core statistics beyond beginner standards. The moment rewarded planning over impulse without relying on purchased equipment. Selling too early would waste their value while other players lacked the level and gold required to appreciate them. He stored the gear, tokens, experience cards, and gold before moving toward the broken cliff edge. The egg rested on a lower outcrop where the earthquake had dropped it, still surrounded by several surviving lightning crystals. Black Owl jumped down without hesitation, using the cliff face to control his descent while loose stones broke beneath his boots. His hands reached the shell and confirmed that no crack, dent, or magical fracture had damaged the unique reward. Incubation had quietly reached completion while the world boss battle raged above it. The cooldown remained the vulnerable window while the system preserved every gain. Lightning energy from the crystals remained inside the shell, but a second colder aura now moved beneath the surface. He had prepared for this possibility while the system preserved every gain. Black Owl carried the egg onto stable ground and activated the final hatching command with more tension than he felt opening the platinum treasure. Fine cracks spread across the shell while tiny electric sparks jumped between the fragments and his fingers. A small head emerged first, followed by 6 folded wings marked from birth with ancient, unfamiliar runes. The newborn examined Black Owl with bright awareness, then tilted its head as though trying to understand the person waiting outside. When he touched its feathers, blue-white lightning arced harmlessly across his skin and confirmed the desired elemental affinity. Relief washed through Black Owl because the crystal's expense and dangerous journey had apparently produced the fastest mutation path. He kept every reaction controlled as stronger enemies entered his path. That relief lasted only seconds before every trace of warmth vanished from the creature in his hands. The advantage still required discipline without sacrificing the long-term plan. Its body became icy, wings sagged, and the newborn stopped breathing before it had fully escaped the broken shell. Black Owl stared in disbelief as fresh feathers decayed and sections of wing, claw, and skull transformed into exposed bone. He had protected the egg through an aerial boss fight, an earthquake, an undead army, and a level 25 world boss. Losing it after successful hatching felt more brutal than watching expensive equipment disappear, because no second egg could ever drop. Before he could search for a revival method, the apparently dead creature moved one skeletal wing. It shook broken shell from its body, opened empty-looking eyes, and rose through the air on partially bony wings. The next step became obvious before the next boss appeared. Death energy absorbed during incubation had not killed the mount. It had forced an undead mutation beyond the original possibilities. Preparation had created this opening before the next boss appeared. The new form required no food, air, or ordinary lifespan and could survive environments that living mounts could never enter. Black Owl noted the advantages, yet disappointment remained because pure undead transformation appeared to sacrifice the lightning speed he had carefully pursued. He extended one arm and invited the tiny creature to land, accepting that even an imperfect, unique flying mount remained extraordinary. The chick understood his gesture, fluttered down, and settled against his sleeve with surprising trust. Contact with Black Owl's death aura triggered another transformation before either of them could move. Decayed flesh regenerated across the exposed skeleton, feathers returned, and the lightning runes reappeared brighter than before. The creature had not lost its original mutation. It could shift between living lightning form and undead death form. The choice preserved speed and safety while every attack carried consequences. Black Owl's disappointment vanished, as he realized the accident had created a dual-attribute variant unknown even within his past life memories. That mechanic reduced dependence on equipment under pressure no beginner should survive. The crystal supplied lightning, the skeletal overlord supplied death, and Legacy of Creation's hidden fragment allowed both forces to coexist. A seemingly disastrous awakening had transformed the unique mount into something far more valuable than the perfect result he originally planned. Black Owl named the tiny dual-form creature Shuang Shuang, and the newborn immediately nuzzled his arm while faint lightning danced across restored feathers. Its current body remained smaller than his palm, making immediate flight impossible despite the extraordinary mutation. Fortunately, the summit still contained hundreds of high-level skeleton soldiers left behind after their master's destruction. Black Owl climbed back toward them while Shuang Shuang tried helping by pulling enthusiastically on the collar of his robe. No unnecessary movement weakened the plan while rival players remained far behind. The gesture accomplished nothing physically, yet confirmed that the newborn possessed awareness, loyalty, and a rapidly developing personality. The result matched his calculation while rival players remained far behind. Mindless skeletons detected living presence the moment Black Owl returned and charged without waiting for orders. He summoned Abhorrent Decoy among their formations, then sat beside Shuang Shuang and allowed the automated build to work. Midnight Onslaught repeatedly drew fresh waves, while every attack against the duplicate returned lethal true damage. The remaining double experience card amplified rewards for both Black Owl and the newly hatched pet. Shuang Shuang gained several levels almost immediately, its body growing larger after every burst of shared experience. Wings extended beyond the tiny juvenile proportions, feathers strengthened, and lightning patterns spread across the expanding frame. He treated success as practical information without exposing his actual body. Black Owl also reached level 13 while Soul Harvest collected another mountain of permanent shards. The numbers exceeded beginner design expectations without exposing his actual body. The duplicate that once barely survived one wolf bite now endured an army of enemies around level 18. No direct control was required beyond positioning, because its mutation automatically pulled targets every 15 seconds. Black Owl finally possessed the farming loop imagined when he first selected the supposedly useless skill. The only missing component was reliable healing for the duplicate, which could eventually make the cycle nearly permanent. Shuang Shuang reached level 6 and unlocked Giant Claw Grab in its undead form. The skill enlarged its skeletal talons, allowing it to seize creatures much larger than itself and lift them into flight. That mechanic reduced dependence on equipment as the hidden quest continued. Grappling strength scaled with the pet's attributes, creating obvious travel, rescue, and battlefield utility. The interface confirmed irreversible improvement before another cooldown completed. Black Owl also recognized a less honorable possibility involving troublesome high-level monsters and rival players. Ordinary players watched the imbalance widen as later rewards became more valuable. Shuang Shuang could carry dangerous creatures toward crowded enemies without Black Owl personally earning infamy for the resulting chaos. Continued leveling expanded the griffin until its wingspan stretched beyond 10 meters across the summit. Its living form crackled with speed-focused lightning, while undead form replaced warmth with silent, tireless durability. Black Owl had wanted a fast mount and received one capable of switching between two entirely different survival profiles. The result exceeded anything available in his former life, even among wealthy players with rare mounts. He stroked Shuang Shuang's feathers and watched the final skeleton wave destroy itself against Abhorrent Decoy. The battlefield supported his exact calculation inside the crowded starting region. The mountain gradually fell quiet, leaving broken bones, cooling ghost fire, and the remains of a shattered ancient seal. He advanced without wasting time inside the crowded starting region. Black Owl had arrived seeking speed and accidentally uncovered a mystery tied directly to his reborn death fragment. The whispers naming Lord Erneyes suggested that Hell Apostle connected him to forces beyond the starting village. He could not solve that mystery yet, but the hidden storyline already pointed toward awakening elder gods. A flying mount, platinum equipment, increased mana, new spells, and world boss rewards had transformed his position completely. At the same time, ordinary players across Village 8384 faced the opposite reality. The three major guilds prepared massive raid teams for Gloomy Bunker and the race toward Pioneer. Early monopolies magnified every later failure without relying on purchased equipment. Each organization assembled hundreds of members, reaching the dungeon's maximum participation capacity through wealth and recruitment. The outcome carried future value before reality and game eventually merged. Dedicated farming teams occupied efficient monster zones while scouts monitored every boss location and rare resource. Other members watched the auction house and purchased useful equipment or skill books immediately after listing. NPC merchants also lost their best inventory to guild buyers before ordinary players could save enough gold. Nearly every reliable leveling area became controlled territory enforced through player killing and intimidation. Independent groups struggled against weak monsters because they lacked equipment, skills, and safe access to dense spawns. One delayed level became several delayed levels, widening the gap every hour the server remained open. No ordinary Warlock sustained this interaction as later rewards became more valuable. The powerful called that outcome competition, though their organization depended on denying everyone else the chance to compete. That consequence shaped his next decision as later rewards became more valuable. Tyrant Guild behaved worst because repeated defeats against Black Owl demanded weaker targets for emotional compensation. Shangguan Bao Bao encountered a small independent party celebrating progress toward level 5. Their happiness irritated him simply because Tyrant's own reputation had suffered publicly. He gathered several guild members and marched toward the party's monster zone with familiar arrogance. The independent captain noticed the approach and immediately understood that their successful farming had attracted unwanted attention. No rule granted Tyrant ownership over those monsters, yet rules had never mattered when overwhelming numbers supported their demands. Shangguan Bao Bao prepared to seize the area and punish anyone refusing to leave. The crowd remembered who began the bullying before any major guild could interfere. This behavior explained why Black Owl never regretted humiliating Tyrant whenever their paths crossed. Rival leaders adjusted their future plans while the system preserved every gain. He remembered the guild's cruelty from his former life, including lies, harassment, and players destroyed outside the game. Black Owl did not need to witness every new offense before recognizing the threat they represented. Still, his immediate path remained separate because the hidden main quest, boss routes, and future fusion demanded constant growth. Eternal Relic would not remain harmless entertainment forever. When the game merged with reality, levels, talents, revival coins, and equipment would determine who survived permanently. Players wasting the opening days on bullying could later discover that social power could not replace true progression. Spectators compared both sides without explanation as stronger enemies entered his path. Black Owl had already secured revival resources that countless people would eventually beg to possess. The choice preserved speed and safety before the next confrontation began. Soul Harvest gave him a mana pool that ordinary endgame players might struggle to approach. Basic mana conversion transformed that endless reserve into equally absurd spell power. Abhorrent Decoy turned enemy aggression into reflected execution while protecting his position through taunt. Fell Decoy redirected any attack that reached his body, preserving health and removing pain. Phantom Substitute covered the dangerous cooldown interval by making him completely untargetable. Without that second-tier spell, the Skeletal Overlord's army would have overwhelmed both defensive dolls before Abhorrent Decoy returned. The stronger strike increased reflected punishment while the village remained unaware. With it, every 30-second gap became a waiting period rather than a fatal weakness. The advantage still required discipline, while the village remained unaware. His apparent invincibility, therefore, depended on understanding how several imperfect mechanics fit together. No single skill had created the build, and no amount of raw money could purchase the same knowledge. Legacy of Creation supplied unlimited future possibilities by absorbing law fragments scattered across the world. Hell Apostle supplied permanent growth and true retaliation through Death Authority. Rebirth supplied the timing, hidden routes, boss knowledge, and confidence to exploit both talents immediately. He understood which attacks to invite, which body should receive them, and when to become impossible to target. The attack strengthened the waiting trap as his mana pool kept expanding. The Ghost Fang Wolves proved the concept when one bite turned into their own execution. Preparation had created this opening while every attack carried consequences. The Lava Colossus proved defensive statistics could not stop true damage. The Poison Boar King proved an enemy's strongest charge could become a one-hit defeat. The Six-Winged Eagle proved reflection still required strategy when an intelligent boss attempted escape. The Skeletal Overlord proved endless armies could become endless fuel for mana and growth. Each encounter exposed a limitation, and Black Owl answered by adding another layer rather than relying on blind confidence. That disciplined progression separated him from guild leaders who treated wealth and numbers as permanent guarantees. Shangguan Inhu could purchase Black Owl's discarded equipment, but not the decisions that made the equipment unnecessary. The investment now appeared painfully inefficient before the next confrontation began. Tyrant could monopolize cattle fields, yet Black Owl simply traveled toward monsters they were terrified to approach. Public attention transformed arrogance into embarrassment before the next confrontation began. They could threaten public harassment, while he could erase their entire party with one area spell. Their 600-player dungeon plans remained impressive only until compared with one Warlock soloing a level 25 world boss. Black Owl did not need their approval, salary, guild title, or protection. He needed information, scalable resources, trusted allies like Halora, and enough strength for the day Eternal Relic became reality. Shuang Shuang spread its 6 wings beside him, lightning illuminating the summit's scattered bones. The undead transformation flickered briefly, replacing living feathers with silent skeletal power before returning again. No unnecessary movement weakened the plan under the game's exact combat rules. That seamless shift embodied Black Owl's entire second life. Every disaster had become another usable advantage. The result matched his calculation without exposing his actual body. Death gave him rebirth. Rebirth gave him a law fragment, and that fragment awakened the talent enemies could not understand. A mocked decoy became his strongest weapon because monsters insisted on attacking it. A dangerous cooldown became manageable because Phantom Substitute removed him from their reach. A world boss awakening became levels, platinum loot, and the death energy needed for a dual-form mount. Even the guilds opposing him unknowingly funded his growth by buying the equipment he no longer required. Black Owl looked toward the starting village below, where thousands still fought over resources he had already surpassed. The quiet reaction concealed larger calculations as the hidden quest continued. He carried no interest in proving himself through arguments when the leaderboard, announcements, and defeated bosses already spoke clearly. The powerful demanded rules they ignored as the hidden quest continued. The hidden main quest still awaited, the Pioneer title remained unclaimed, and the game's future catastrophe remained unavoidable. Black Owl now possessed limitless mana growth. scaling spell power, layered substitutes, true retaliation, and a unique flying companion. Any enemy could attack him, but their strength would determine how violently the punishment returned. Any enemy could bypass the taunting duplicate, but Fell Decoy would receive the blow instead. Any army could destroy both dolls, but Phantom Substitute would carry him safely until the cycle restarted. Without that final bridge, his reflected build could be overwhelmed by enough pressure. With every layer working together, even a sealed ruler 25 levels high could not touch his real health. Black Owl had returned aiming for first place, and before leaving the starting village, he had already become the standard everyone else feared.